the blockchain report. Bitcoin's holding at 107K, and here's why. Trump Media just filed for a Bitcoin and Ethereum ETF because nothing says sound finance quite like Truth Social. Michael Saylor dropped $1 billion on Bitcoin during airstrikes in Iran? Well, because apparently war equals buying the dip. And Shaq, well, he just paid $1.8 million to forget he ever said FTF is a slam dunk. And this and so much more, including some special guests on today's show. Let's go! Good morning, my hash rate heroes, layer 2 lunatics, and everyone who thinks ETFs are just government-approved pump and dumps. I'm Hank Hudson reporting live from the Bay Area, where the parking's non-existent, the rent is sentient, and your Uber driver just tried to pitch you on ordinals. It's Monday, gang. The headlines are loud, the markets are twitchy, and somewhere Michael Saylor just bought more Bitcoin during a geopolitical meltdown, because of course he did. But before we light the fuse on this week's crypto chaos, punch that like button like it just offered to sell you a Bored Ape NFT, and be sure to follow RoxomTV and me at Hank at RoxomTV on whatever platform hasn't been labeled hate speech for saying sound money yet. Now, whether you're tuning in from a Telegram chat full of fake Vitalics, your cousin's basement mining rig, or a tech startup that's secretly a DAO in disguise, grab your caffeine, double check your wallet seed phrase, and let's figure out what the hell is going on in today's cryptoverse. But first, let's hit the charts in this morning's market rundown. Let's go. All right, we're back, but we're on the wrong camera. Let's switch it over to camera 3 if we can here, boys and girls. So we can go over this market's rundown this morning. Let's take a peek at how things are moving and shaking after this long weekend. There I am. Okay, we found it. It's Monday and it's a live show. Cut us some slack. All right, so this morning things are looking not too bad. Right now, Bitcoin sitting at about $107,600, up almost $2,000 in just the last 24 hours. Really nice start to our week here. Ethereum is up nearly 3.5% this morning. XRP is up almost 5.5%, sitting at $2.28 a coin. Cardano's up to nearly 66 cents. And Dogecoin not doing a whole lot, sitting just beneath 18 cents a pop. They're up almost 1.5% this morning. Let's move it over to the stonk market and see how thingies be looking there. Right now, Dow Jones is up 1% this morning. The Nasdaq's up 300 points, and the S&P is also up about a percentage point. Things are looking good this Monday. Is this the start of something bigger? I don't know. We'll find out in just a bit. Also, MicroStrategy, surprising, down about $2.50 this morning with Bitcoin up. I would have expected the same from MicroStrategy. Does it have something to do with their latest Bitcoin buy? We'll be talking about that in just a bit, so stay tuned. Tesla's up $4.50 this morning, just about. Coinbase having a really nice Monday, up almost 5% in the early hours of trading. Nvidia's up almost 2.5 percentage points. And what else? GameStop having a nice little recovery, up almost 5% this morning after a significant drawback late last week. So we're going to take a quick break, but when we're back, we have a lot to cover, including 2 very special guests, so stay tuned. We'll be back with the Bull Run and more right after this.
Security matters. Zappo Bank, the only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
right, and welcome back. And joining us this morning on our bull run, we have a man who's been in Bitcoin since 2010 and he's never looked back. He's the founder of the Crocs Road, where education, merch, and liberty all meet the orange coin. Please welcome this morning to the Blockchain Report, the Bitcoin Libertarian himself, Fernando. Fernando, welcome to the show. How are you this morning? It's great to have you on this Monday.
I'm fine. It's for me, it's good night because here in Hong Kong it's 11:20 p.m. But I'm so happy to be here. I'm so energetic. I love talking about Bitcoin, so I'm here to be until you want.
Oh, Fernando, you're the best. At 11:20, my goodness, we appreciate you staying up late with us because there's a lot to talk about today. Before we get started, though, Fernando, I want to talk a little bit about you first. You've been in Bitcoin forever, since 2010. That's way before most people even knew what Bitcoin was. I gotta know, as being an early entrant into this space, what first drew you in and how did that evolve into the mission behind Crocs Road and your broader work as the Bitcoin Libertarian?
Well, long story short, I'm from Argentina. So I am my dad. I come from a middle class family. My mom and my dad were employees, and my financial advice always was work and save, and especially save in US dollars because for us the US dollar is hard money, and try to keep the money out of the bank. So I started studying engineering, then I started studying economics, and while studying economics, I went into the rabbit hole of Austrian economics because one day the teacher was teaching about the central bank and the fractional reserves, and I said, this cannot be true. This cannot be true. This sounds like a Ponzi. And then I went into the rabbit hole of Austrian economics. That was around 2007, 2010. Long story short, I met my business partner, Diego, who is the other person behind the Bitcoin Libertarian. And I want to mention him because he doesn't like the cameras, but we are two behind the Bitcoin Libertarian. And we start doing business with online marketing. By 2010, 2011, we used to pay money outside Argentina and receive money from outside Argentina. And as you probably know, because you are surrounded by Argentinians there in Roxom, we always had some problems with sending and receiving money from the country, and we have a lot of restrictions on currency and changing the pesos to the dollar. So to do this transfer, we used to do with Neteller, Moneybooker, PayPal, and we found this thing called Bitcoin that was a new PayPal that allowed us to send and receive money from Argentina to all over the world to pay for our advertising campaigns. For that time, we didn't pay too much attention about Bitcoin. For us was another Moneybooker, another PayPal. And then time went by, I moved to Thailand for business, and it was 2016 and started the bull run of 2016, 2017, when everyone was talking about Bitcoin and crypto especially. So in this time, I went into Bitcoin, started doing some shit coining. For me at that time, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, Dogecoin were all the same things with different price. And at that time, we didn't have these amazing educational projects like Roxom or all other podcasts that you can find for free in YouTube. And well, time went by, and in 2020, during the pandemic, and thanks to Michael Saylor, I remember we were here in Hong Kong with Diego, my business partner, watching the series Saylor and Breed of series at the office. And we said, okay, this was the moment when we were 100% orange pill. We went into Bitcoin 100%. And in 2022, we started the project of Crocs Road, that is a daily newsletter, email newsletter. And 1 year after, we started the project with the podcast of Crocs Road. Long story short, the podcast, the YouTube closed our channel and we didn't have the luck to recover it. And we started again at the beginning of this year, streaming on X and also on YouTube. And we changed the brand of the podcast to the Bitcoin Libertarian. So now we have the Bitcoin Libertarian, that is the main character that runs the podcast and all these projects. And we have Crocs Road, that is the newsletter. Our main objective, we don't work in Bitcoin, we have another businesses. Our main objective is orange pill as much people as possible, because we see that the financial Armageddon is coming, and we feel like Noah trying to bring animals to our ark so we can save as many souls as possible.
I love to hear that, Fernando. And we have a lot in common with you, actually. I mean, we're trying to educate the masses, orange pill as many people as we can, spread the good word. Like you, we were also taken off YouTube for a little bit. They just reinstated us a few weeks ago. And lastly, just like you have your partner, Diego, behind the scenes, I am very fortunate to have a whole bunch of amazing people behind our scenes making our program happen, just like they're able to make yours. So, we've got a lot to talk about, Fernando. I'm going to have you stay put for just a sec. We're going to go over the first story. I'm going to bring you back in, and we're going to chat about it. Sound good?
Excellent.
All right, stay put, my friend. Okay, in a move as subtle as a MAGA hat at Burning Man, Trump Media and Technology Group has officially filed with the SEC to launch a Bitcoin and Ethereum ETF. And yes, we are in fact talking about that Trump Media operator. They're the operators of Truth Social, Truth Plus, and soon Truth Finance. No word yet on Truth Coin, but let's give it a week. Now, the ETF cleverly named Truth Social Bitcoin and Ethereum ETF, BT, because nothing says financial confidence like tacking your social media brand onto a volatile crypto product, will be split 75% into Bitcoin, 25% into Ethereum. Now, custody? Well, Crypto.com's got that. Execution, also Crypto.com. Staking and liquidity, you guessed it, Crypto.com again. Trump Media appears to be outsourcing the entire thing to Crypto.com while slapping their logo on the front like a toddler claiming he built the Lego set his mom definitely finished. Now, the ETF will live on the New York Stock Exchange ARCA, pending approval of the SEC's 19B-4 filing and the usual regulatory foreplay. The sponsor, Yorkville America Digital, which sounds more like a failed alt-rock band than a fictional or a financial institution, but hey, it's 2025 after all. Naturally, the press release is full of forward-looking statements, cautionary disclaimers, and enough legal hedging to fill a hedge maze. Now, the message between the lines is, we hope this ETF pumps our stock and that no one reads the fine print. If approved, the move would mark yet another financial product cashing in on Bitcoin's credibility while riding its coattails like a drunken wedding crasher at a black tie gala. Still, a Bitcoin ETF, even a Trump-branded one, is ultimately bullish for Bitcoin, as it signals that the orange wave believes there's money to be made riding Bitcoin's current 107K momentum. And if the ETF does well, great for Bitcoin. If it flops, well, Bitcoin will be fine. Can't say the same for Donald J. Trump, though. Either way, we'll be watching, popcorn in one hand, cold wallet in another. So we're bringing back Fernando. Fernando, I want to talk about this story. Trump Media just filed to launch a Bitcoin and Ethereum ETF. Do you see this as a genuine endorsement of crypto by Trump's team? Or is this just another opportunistic move to cash in on Bitcoin's bull run? What do you think?
I think that can be an opportunistic move because we see Trump since day one doing all this kind of shitcoining stuff with the Trump coin. Then he said he promised the Bitcoin, Bitcoin Federal Reserve and the strategic Bitcoin Reserve. Sorry, and then he came up with the crypto reserve. He do a meeting in the White House about crypto, brought Saylor, brought other shitcoiners. So I don't understand because I just saw the news today when your production team sent to me, and I was coming back walking, I was reading it, and I said, this is so Trump. I don't know why 70% in Bitcoin and 25% in Ethereum. And I don't know why it's Ethereum, because I don't think that was going to happen. Let's say he can do like probably 75% in Bitcoin, 25% in Solana, that in my opinion is much better than Ethereum and can be today until we develop more technology for Bitcoin, like a layer 2 of Bitcoin. But I don't understand the move of Trump. I don't know. Probably there are some people behind that wants to they put money for the campaign and they want to cash back some money. To be honest, I don't understand. I I don't know why to mix Ethereum with Bitcoin in one ETF. Probably, to be honest, I don't understand. I think it's a little bit opportunity to cash out a lot of money, not only for Trump, for many people who is surrounding him.
100%. I mean, do you even think that any serious Bitcoin product should even include Ethereum to begin with? I mean, does that kind of dilute the mission?
No, I don't think so because again, I'm a Bitcoin maxi. So if you follow me on X, you say every time I wake up, I say, good morning, anything not Bitcoin is a scam. So I think that anything not Bitcoin is a scam. So mix Ethereum with Bitcoin, and it's like, I don't understand why they do. I think that if you want to do an ETF, okay, go pure Bitcoin. If you want to do an ETF on Ethereum, do pure Ethereum or pure Solana, but I don't know what is the mix about, to be honest. Probably they don't see Ethereum going up so fast and they put with Bitcoin. They want to pump Ethereum a little bit because there are people behind. Just remember, Ethereum is a company. It's another company like all the other companies that run all the other coins. So company have people, company have CEOs. So probably there is some interest behind to put this 20% Ethereum. But to be honest, I don't like it. I wouldn't advise to buy it, but let's see what happens.
Let's see what happens. That's pretty much all we can do with Donald these days. And something else I found interesting about this was that all custody, all staking will be handled by crypto.com. Do you feel like outsourcing every major part of this ETF to a single centralized exchange, does that concern you at all from like a security or a decentralization perspective?
Of course, for me, I concern if I have to invest and it's under one custodial like crypto.com. Again, so first of all, I wouldn't invest on this ETF because I don't. I wouldn't invest even in the Bitcoin ETF, in the real Bitcoin ETF from BlackRock. And but this like in crypto.com mixed with Ethereum and Bitcoin and centralized again, for me, there is something shady behind of that. Just when you were talking about crypto.com, I'm a big fan of the UFC, and the main sponsor of UFC is crypto.com. And you see Trump going to UFC every event. So I don't know what is happening behind that, but for sure, there is people making a lot of money out of that.
Undoubtedly so. I think there's a lot of people making money from this, specifically the Trump family. From a libertarian standpoint, do you feel like it's a win to have more Bitcoin ETFs, even ones with political branding, because like they increase the overall access? Or does wrapping Bitcoin in more Wall Street packaging undercut its original ethos?
Well, this is a very, very good question because it's a discussion that is happening since, first of all, especially since the ETF, because when Saylor started stacking, nobody understood what he was doing, so nobody paid attention to Saylor. But when ETFs came, they start all the OGs and the libertarians and the Bitcoin maximalists start criticizing that. I have like I cannot say. Let's say in Argentina we have a quote that says, "I'm crazy, but I don't eat glass." So I have to say that I'm a maximalist, but I don't eat glass. So I don't like Of course, the ethos of Bitcoin is to reach the people, to bank the unbanked, not to be centralized, not to go for the big corporations. The original ethos of Bitcoin was destroy all these big corporations that generated the crash of 2008. But from my standpoint, I have to say that we need to reach Bitcoin. We need to reach 8 billion people. We need to make Bitcoin massive. So I think that these instruments, ETF, companies with treasury strategy, governments adopting Bitcoin, they are putting Bitcoin in the media because not all the people is maxi and not all the people is going to be maxi. So people need to adopt Bitcoin. So we need to bring things that people trust, the banks, the companies behind the ETF, the governments, probably the listed companies. Oh, if they are using Bitcoin, perfect. So now Bitcoin is good. It's not for people in the dark, like drug dealers or all this crap, Bitcoin is good. So for me, it's not good to be in hands of the governments or the companies or the big people of Wall Street, but on the other side, it is generating a lot of mainstream, and it's gonna boost the adoption. More people are gonna look at Bitcoin. They are gonna see Bitcoin on the mainstream, and at least they are gonna go to YouTube and they're gonna reach the rabbit hole. And one of the things that I repeat is like, okay, perfect. They are going for Bitcoin. They are powerful. They have a lot of money, but at the end of the day, they are gonna play with the same rules that all of us play in the Bitcoin network. So Trump, Saylor, BlackRock are playing with the same rules of Bitcoin than me, you, or a person that is in the middle of Africa that owns only 1,000 sats. So that's the magic of Bitcoin, and that is why I love Bitcoin. Bitcoin is for everyone, even for the big corporations and for the poor people. And I think that the adoption of the big corporation will boost the rich. And of course, let's say, imagine a person that is 60 years old and they just want to invest money and generates a return, or probably 50, or probably a pension fund that they don't want to deal with the security, the wallets, the keys, all these things that probably most of the people don't like or don't understand. They just go for the ETF, or they just go for MicroStrategy. That's the good part. Of course, on the other side, they are controlling a big part of Bitcoin, but we can still buy Bitcoin, and we must buy Bitcoin. So I don't care. We all play with the same rules. And of course, no matter what happens, we will always have 21 million Bitcoin. So that's the point.
Very true. And assuming this ETF does get approved, do you think, so it sounds like you think it'll help legitimize Bitcoin to traditional finance, even though it is tied to something as controversial as Trump media. Do you feel like this is still an important part of the adoption cycle, this particular instance, or does this actually create more noise than signal going forward due to its affiliation with Trump media?
Of course it creates noise. Of course, do that. What happened with the Trump coin and all the shit coining that they were doing in the past. But on the other side, again, if I think as a maxi, it's a crap. But if I think that as a person who wants Bitcoin to be adopted for all the people, probably a person in the middle of Texas see that, oh, it's endorsed by Trump, so it's good. So they're gonna go to the ETF, and probably at the end, they will do the research, and they will end up becoming a maxi or going all in on Bitcoin, understanding the basic things. I was a shitcoiner in one part of my life. So I think that these things, of course, from the maxi, from the libertarian point of view, I criticize a lot, but on the other side, you need to see that this put Bitcoin in the mass media. So it will reach more people. More people will hear the word Bitcoin, and it's gonna go to YouTube. But there is a lot of free information, and if they do their own research, they will win. And if not, probably they will lose money. It's like capitalism works like this. So
on the whole, you feel like this type of thing actually increases the visibility and the awareness of Bitcoin, despite the fact there is some noise is gonna come with it. This is a positive thing on the whole.
Of course, I think that all the things that put Bitcoin on mainstream are good. Although all these things that the ETF mix with Bitcoin and Ethereum, and I don't know what's happening behind, but what is the adoption now? How many people in the world is adopting Bitcoin? Because we live in an ecosystem. We the Bitcoiners. I wake up in the morning, I check Twitter, everyone is talking about Bitcoin. I go to the office, I am with my business partner, we are talking with him about Bitcoin all day. I come back home, I go to the gym, I listen podcasts about Bitcoin. So I think that everyone in the world is into Bitcoin, and we are just a few fraction. So a lot of people either don't know what is Bitcoin, don't understand, or still think that it's something shady. So with this instrument coming up, we are going to have a lot of people exposed to Bitcoin. Probably some of them, they will lose money. I don't know what happened with Celsius, with FTX, but it's the proof of work. We need to learn. But again, if I let's say if I see the ETF of Bitcoin, I will start Google using ChatGPT, Grok, go into YouTube and try to find out what is this, and I will end up in the rabbit hole. I think that many people will end up in the rabbit hole after these instruments go into the light.
I agree. I think overall the noise we're going to experience will probably be outweighed by the additional awareness that it's going to promote for Bitcoin on kind of a global, at least national, if not global scale. So I agree with you there. Stay tuned, Fernando. We got another story I'm going to bring you back for in a second, because in terms of people that are spreading awareness for Bitcoin, there may not be anyone in the world doing it more than our Lord and Saylor, Michael Saylor, because he did it again. He tweeted the Bitcoin chart, which in Saylor speak means the company is about to buy more Bitcoin. This time, though, he's posting through the chaos, literally, as Israel launched airstrikes against Tehran on Thursday, and the world held its collective breath. I mean, markets flinched, Bitcoin dropped a whopping 3%, and now MicroStrategy is getting ready to gobble up more of it. Actually, scratch that. They already did, to the tune of $1.05 billion in cold, hard Bitcoin, baby. That's over 10,000 BTC at an average price of just over 104K per coin. Now, their last buy, well, it isn't the last buy anymore. Their new total stack is actually a casual 592,100 BTC, worth like over $60 billion, I think, at the time of writing. Now with an average price of just over 70,000 per coin, and they're up over 50% on the play. Not too bad. If you're keeping score at home, that means Saylor is outperforming most hedge funds by holding a JPEG of private keys. Meanwhile, the crypto fear and greed index is at 60, which is firmly in the greed territory. And the ETFs, well, they're flooding in $1.3 billion in net inflows just last week alone, because when the world is on fire, Bitcoin is the fireproof mattress stuffed with gold bars. Now, that said, there's a wild card here. If Iran closes the Strait of Hormuz, where 20% of the world's oil ships through, energy prices are going to go vertical. Risk assets will likely then take a hit, even Bitcoin, because as much as we love the orange coin, you still need electricity to mine it, But right now, it is showing strength, it is showing resilience, and Michael Saylor, ever the prophet of number go up, sees the chaos and says, looks like it's a good time to DCA. We're bringing back Fernando on this story. Fernando, I want to talk more about this one here. Michael Saylor just bought another $1 billion worth of Bitcoin while the world was bracing for a potential war. What does this say to you about Bitcoin's role as a hedge during times of geopolitical chaos?
You mean about Saylor? It's Saylor. So Saylor is doing what Saylor would do. So he doesn't care. And I think that is what anyone in this world has to do. He's buying Bitcoin, no matter if there is a war, no matter if there is a new AI developed that is threatening the US economy, no matter if there is an alien invasion, because anyone who understands basic first, second grade of primary school mathematics understand that they need to buy Bitcoin no matter what. You need to buy Bitcoin no matter what. And Bitcoin doesn't care about the war, doesn't care about anything. As I was discussing before, it's only 21 million. If you understand basic mathematics, if you understand that, if you see that Saylor is buying Bitcoin, Metaplanet is buying Bitcoin, all the companies is buying Bitcoin, the governments are about to buy Bitcoin, again, I would keep, if you have money, I would keep buying. I would keep doing DCA, no matter if there is a war, no matter if there is, I don't know, like an asteroid hitting the Earth, aliens invading us. Always is a good time to buy Bitcoin. And it's Saylor. Saylor is a man of his word. He said, I will buy Bitcoin anytime. He's 100% and he's not selling. So that's the magic.
Yeah, he's not selling me. We're talking over 592,000 Bitcoin for MicroStrategy/strategy. Do you think that this type of corporate accumulation is good for the decentralized ethos of Bitcoin, or is it turning Bitcoin into a digital oil field for CEOs everywhere?
I think that it's the same question that we talked before. I think that for the ethos of Bitcoin, it's not good because but again, Bitcoin doesn't care, and Bitcoin you don't have to ask permission to buy Bitcoin. You don't have to ask permission to mine. You don't have to have permission to own Bitcoin or to hold. So Saylor is in his own right to raise money and buy Bitcoin. And on the other side, again, is pushing the price of Bitcoin up. And the most important thing is putting Bitcoin in the mainstream. Is all the companies are adopting Bitcoin. The CEOs are adopting Bitcoin. So there is changing. We are now in a change of paradigm of how finances are working. The future CFO of companies, they need to know a lot about Bitcoin. So I think that we are in a change of paradigm. You say, of course, the ethos, I don't know if Satoshi is around. I don't know, probably he or she is not happy of all these things, of the massive concentration. But on the other side, Bitcoin doesn't care, and you don't have to ask permission to buy Bitcoin. So, and again, he's playing with the same rules of all of us. If I want to buy Bitcoin now, I can go and buy. It's not that Saylor is buying and you cannot buy. Everyone can buy Bitcoin, and he can use his power to hold money and buy Bitcoin. And I think that he's creating a lot of new instruments. And again, he's revolutionizing the finance world. So probably from the ethos of Bitcoin is not good, but from another financial point in the future with the new instruments that are going, it's going to be good.
Yeah, I think you're right. And as we kind of enter into this new world order where Bitcoin is becoming more and more prevalent and prominent across the globe, we have to start looking at how do geopolitical factors in the world, how are those going to affect Bitcoin in the future, right? Like, for instance, right now, due to this geopolitical conflict that's going on, global energy prices could very well skyrocket, right? And if it does, that would in theory mean that Bitcoin mining could become a lot more expensive. If that were to happen, do you still see Bitcoin holding up as a long-term store of value, even with these much increased energy prices going forward affecting mining?
I see. For me, Bitcoin is gonna go up forever. So it's Bitcoin is the only. Imagine one thing. You talk about energy, and I like to talk about one thing, that all the economical transactions of the humans, we spend work and we spend time to do a transaction. We go to work, we work for an hour, for a couple of hours, and we spend time. Work divided time is energy. So all the transactions of economic are energy. So Bitcoin is the only currency in the world that can store this energy, that is real energy for economic transactions. So I don't know if the price of energy is gonna go up. Probably they will find new ways to make mining cheaper, or Bitcoin price is gonna go up and mining is gonna be more profitable because of the up of the price. So again, I don't think that probably if you think in the short term, probably we can have some problems, we can have some issues, but we need to have Bitcoin in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. In the long term, Bitcoin is gonna go up forever. In the middle, can happen some things, but you see, there is war or probably like a kind of war, and Saylor is buying. All the other companies are buying. The people are buying. So again, in the short term, it can have a problem, but in the long term, we always will find a solution to make energy cheaper. Miners will adapt, and Bitcoin will go up forever because it's the only way that we have to store energy that is the basis of all economic transactions of the world.
Yeah, I think I'd have to agree with you. I mean, I think what we have seen during Bitcoin's 15, 16 years, right, is people freak out about these short-term problems, but if you scale back and look at Bitcoin, not in weeks and months, but in years and decades, right, it does the same thing, which is it goes up, and those short-term problems end up being just that, short-term. So I appreciate your insight on that, Fernando. hang tight with me. We're doing another story. I'm going to bring you right back because I'm going to want to talk to you about this one. Because next, Brazil, home of Carnival, Capiranas, and now central bank Bitcoin allocation. Well, in a historic move, Brazil is pushing a bill that would allow up to 5% of its $370 billion in international reserves to be allocated to Bitcoin. Yeah, 5% from a G20 country that's not a startup nation or some Central American beach republic trying to pump tourism. This is Latin America's largest economy we're talking about here, codifying Bitcoin into law, not just vibes. The bill, known as PL 4501-2024, proposes the creation of a strategic sovereign Bitcoin reserve. It's like El Salvador's Bitcoin play, except with actual legislation and a whole lot more money, baby. And unlike El Salvador's top-down presidential mandate, Brazil's move is going through Congress. That means that this isn't a one-man show, it's national policy. And if passed, Brazil's central bank and Ministry of Finance would have full authority to treat Bitcoin like any other reserve asset. Except, of course, Bitcoin isn't like any other reserve asset because gold doesn't go up 150% in 12 months and fiat doesn't come with a hard cap. Now, according to the legislative text, the goal is diversification, macroeconomic risk reduction, and here's the real kicker, strategic hedging. So yeah, Brazil is openly admitting that it sees Bitcoin as a hedge. Now, against what, might you ask? Well, probably the same thing we all see coming, which is currency debasement, monetary mismanagement, and geopolitical chaos. Crypto Twitter naturally lost its mind once this was announced. Some people saying Brazil turning Bitcoin into a reserve asset could trigger global copycat behavior. This was posted by one user on X. And well, they're probably not wrong, because let's be real, if Brazil does this, and it sticks, it certainly sets a precedent that no central banker can ignore. Suddenly, Bitcoin isn't the crazy uncle at the reserve asset family reunion. It's the favorite nephew that got rich and now pays for everyone's dinner. The bill has passed committee and is heading to Brazil's Chamber of Deputies. Now, if this passes, Bitcoin gets its own share at the IMF's metaphorical table. And the next time someone says Bitcoin isn't real money, you can point to Brazil and say, funny, they actually put it in their treasury. We're bringing Fernando back to chat about this one. Fernando, Brazil is proposing to put 5% of its national reserves into Bitcoin. As a libertarian Bitcoiner, how big of a signal is this to you?
Well, first of all, I don't know if you know, we Argentinians and Brazilians, we are like a little bit of rivals on football. And for me, it's a little bit, I don't like that the first movers are them, but for me, it's like very good because I was always saying the first country, of course, you have El Salvador, that is, with all the respect that I have for El Salvador, and I love this country. In fact, in my Twitter, I have the El Salvador flag, but this is a small country. It's like my company adopting a Bitcoin treasury strategy. It doesn't move the needle. But Brazil is one of the biggest countries in the world. It's part of the G20. I think that is the fifth or sixth economy in the world. I don't know the numbers, but it's a super huge economy that is growing so much. And if they allocate 5% of 370 billion of dollar reserve into a Bitcoin reserve, it will trigger a lot of things. First of all, of course, a spike on the price, because you need to, I was doing the math, and this amount of money at the price of today is 173,000 Bitcoin. That is probably the supply, like the production of Bitcoin of around 500 years. So this is crazy. This will take a huge race to get more Bitcoin, a spike on the price, and from the perspective of Latin America, being Brazil let's say the engine of Latin America economy, they adopting Bitcoin would be great, not only for Brazil, only for Latin America, because I was thinking probably, okay, what happens if now we have a trade union in South America called the Mercosur that is between Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay. What happens if this goes to the Mercosur as well? It's going to be good for Argentina. It's going to be good for Paraguay. It's going to be good for Uruguay. So again, all these movements for me, even though they don't respect the ethos of Bitcoin, blah, 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 whatever, are good for the adoption and are good for the price and are good for the people of Brazil because they are going to have 5% of their big stack of money that is melting like an ice cube on the summer. Now they're going to have on Bitcoin. They're going to have a lot of a part of their earned money that will be appreciating on time. So it's going to be amazing. So for me, I hope Brazil gets it. So it's going to be very good for the region as well. Even though our president is not a good friend of Brazil's president. So, but let's see what happens.
Well, he's not a good friend with a lot of people, so you know what happens. So this bill is going through Congress, and unlike El Salvador, it's not being pushed by one leader. Do you feel like this democratic approach makes it more legitimate in this instance, or could it even make it more dangerous for Bitcoin in the long run?
No, for me, let's say for Brazil and for the adoption is good because if you go through let's say if there is something from the president, they can come another president and they can take out at the first day of office. But if it's through a law, to revert this law, it's a very more complex process because they need to go to the Congress again. You need to have the majority. It's not so simple. And for me, again, it's positive. It's positive. Again, Bitcoin now is only 16 years old. I know that it needs to go to the people, doesn't have to go to the government, but all these movements are positive for Bitcoin, are positive for the people because people in the country are going to be their currency is going to be worth more. It's not going to be the base. So I think that the governments that think to put reserve on Bitcoin, they are protecting their country, their people. So for me, it's positive, and I hope Argentina would do the same.
Yeah, and I think we can agree that the reason this is very positive is if a G20 country successfully adopts Bitcoin in its reserves, you got to feel like, to an extent, this might kind of force the hand of other central banks to maybe do the same, or do you think that other countries are going to resist until the last possible second when their hand is totally forced and they have to jump in?
If they resist, they are not going to be good. I think that everyone has to take the advantage of the first movers. So one of the things that I regret on my life is not having known or not having studied more Bitcoin the first time I went into Bitcoin, because if I had studied Bitcoin enough at that time, probably I will be retired now. I will be billionaire, but I didn't study Bitcoin at that time. I didn't go through Bitcoin to $1, but so that's the thing. I think that you cannot fight against Bitcoin. You cannot say, okay, I'm not going to adopt, because Bitcoin is going to be the standard of the world in the next 10 years. So all the wealth is going to be measured in Bitcoin. So if you are against Bitcoin, it's like being against the gravity. So it's against the law of gravity. So you're against the law of nature. So I think that you can say, okay, I'm not buying Bitcoin, but you're going to pay the consequence after. Because in the next 10 years, I'm sure Bitcoin would be the measure of wealth. I don't know if we are going to transact on Bitcoin. I don't know if we are going to pay in Bitcoin every day, but it's going to be the measure of wealth of the world. So the first movers will take advantage of that.
Totally. Stay tuned with me, Fernando. We got one more story I want to bring you back for, because this next story is about one of these first movers, and we're talking about Japanese investment firm Metaplanet, as they just dropped another bombshell. They want to buy 210,000 Bitcoin by the end of 2027, and that's not a typo of any kind. That's over $5.4 billion worth of the orange coin. Their stock, well, it shot up 22% at one point after the news, because apparently investors love a good reckless conviction play. And if they pull it off, Metaplanet would become the second largest public holder of Bitcoin, right behind Michael Saylor's company, Strategy. We love you, Michael. I'm just kidding. Now, currently, Metaplanet holds 8,888 BTC because obviously they're playing the numerology game too. Their mission, though, buy over 201,000 more Bitcoin. Yes, they literally announced a $555 million plan, which sounds less like a corporate initiative and more like a secret cabal meeting. Anyway, by 2026, they're hoping to hit 100,000 Bitcoin, and by 2027, they want 210,000 BTC, all while presumably whispering hodl into the cherry blossoms during the spring. Now, this follows a very popular trend here, gang, as more and more companies are going full laser eyes. I mean, we're talking from South Korea media firms to Parisian crypto startups to actually even GameStop. Some stocks, they moon. Some stocks have seemed to rug. But Metaplanet's is up over 1,700% since they first bought Bitcoin last July. So yeah, if you're wondering who's next to pump their balance sheet full of BTC, just look for the company that's quietly filing for a line of credit and ordering a Saylor bobblehead. Of course, I need to get one of those for the desk. Let's get on that, gang. We're bringing back Fernando here for this one. Fernando, Metaplanet announced that they want to buy 210,000 Bitcoin by 2027, meaning they got a year and a half left. Is this ambitious? Or is this borderline reckless?
Oh, this is an ambitious plan, but I think that they are committed and they are going to do it. I'm not doubting. I think they're going to do it because they are the living proof that how a Bitcoin standard can save you. Because let's put in the biggest companies that are doing Bitcoin treasury strategy. We have MicroStrategy or Strategy, we have the blockchain group, and we have Metaplanet. MicroStrategy or Strategy and the blockchain group are companies that are working, that they have positive cash flow, and they start moving money to Bitcoin because they don't want to have this stack of money melting like an ice cube. But Metaplanet was a hotel company that was at the edge of bankruptcy. And since they adopted Bitcoin, they become the biggest company in the Japanese stock in trade and in ROI, so in the return of the stock. So I think that they are going to do it, and this proves how adopting a Bitcoin standard will save your company, and how all the financial work on all the metrics that we have studied at the university are useless right now. Because the other day I talked in my podcast with the CEO of the blockchain group, and he said, like, I only care of increasing the Bitcoin per share. I only care of increasing the Bitcoin per share. And I think that this is in the head of the CEOs of many companies. And if you're not doing this, your company is going to go bankruptcy. So I think that Metaplanet, it's a bold statement, it's an ambitious plan, but they are going to make it. So, and another thing that I want to add that probably we speak before the talk is like another advantage of all these companies adopting Bitcoin and the government adopting Bitcoin is that it reduced Bitcoin volatility. Because as you have in the past, let's say in the last bull run previous to MicroStrategy coming in, like you have the retail that, of course, the paper hands, the diamond hands, that when a little bit down of the price, they start selling, or very up of the price, they start selling to take profit. But now you have all these players that they are stacking a huge amount of Bitcoin and they are not selling. So this generates that the volatility of Bitcoin is not as high as before. And this allows to create a lot of new finance instruments, and they allow, for example, in the future to have pension funds investing in Bitcoin, like university funds investing in Bitcoin, health funds investing in Bitcoin. So what's going to be better for everyone? So I see the future very bright. So I'm so bullish on Bitcoin. So that's what I want to bring more and more people into Bitcoin, because the people who study Bitcoin in the next 5 years, is going to have a very good life, and the people that don't is going to pay the consequences. So that's my goal, to educate people about Bitcoin.
Oh, well, I love hearing it. And you heard it here first, gangs. If you start Bitcoin in the next 5 years, you'll have a very good life. If not, well, don't say that we didn't warn you. Fernando, thank you so much for joining us on the Blockchain Report this morning. If our audience wants to learn more about you and everything you're doing, where can we send them?
Well, they can follow us on X. It's our handle is the Bitcoin, THE Bitcoin _. They can follow us in our YouTube channel. We do a streaming around three times a week, live stream with huge voices of the space. Our YouTube channel is the Bitcoin Libertarian, as it sounds. And we have another YouTube channel that is in Spanish, the Bitcoin Libertarian ESP. That is the channel in Spanish that we are starting now, because my mother language, as you may notice, is Spanish.
Love it. And thank you so much for your time, Fernando, the Bitcoin Libertarian. You're welcome back anytime. We certainly appreciate having you on the show this morning. And you enjoy the start to your week, my friend. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me. And again, anytime you want, just ping me.
You're the best. Thanks, Fernando. We're going to take a quick break, but when we're back, we've got more stories underway and a new guest you are not going to want to miss. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to this morning's bull run, and the big guests don't stop right now. We have another guest joining us. We're talking Pedro Solomano. He's a sharp-eyed financial journalist at DL News who recently wrote a piece with one of the most savage headlines of the year saying Saylor's play for the $100 trillion corporate bond market is complete financial gibberish, says legendary short seller. Which, if nothing else, makes Pedro the unofficial press secretary for people who think financial engineering should come with airbags. And we're excited to bring him on the show today. Let's bring him on. Pedro, how are you? Welcome to the Blockchain Report. How are you this Monday morning?
Yeah, man. Good to be here. Thanks for saying that intro. I'm not the one who's calling it complete financial gibberish, but I'm keen to talk about it. I'm keen to talk about it.
Yeah, no, we got a lot to talk about. And to recap a little bit about a story we did earlier, and then we're going to jump into it. Today we kicked things off in the show by talking about Saylor's latest Bitcoin shopping spree. While most of the world was watching Middle East airstrikes and waiting for oil prices to explode, Strategy casually dropped another $1 billion on over 10,000 Bitcoin, bringing their total stack to over 592,000 coins. With an average price of over 70,000. They're now up over 50% on the play, and apparently that was all the excuse Saylor needed to tweet a chart and yell DCA into the void again. But I want to specifically talk about your article. Saylor's not just stacking sats anymore. He's trying to reinvent the entire corporate bond market using preferred shares. And, well, not everyone's buying it, including Jim Chanos, who basically called the whole thing a glorified TED Talk in financial gibberish. So I want to get into it. Pedro, explain it to me like I'm a high school econ student. What exactly is Saylor doing with these preferred shares, and why is he calling this a better mousetrap than corporate bonds?
Yeah, sure. It's funny. I saw the headline today that he had bought more Bitcoin, and I was just thinking to myself, he's really taking it to the extreme, this idea that you never have enough Bitcoin. Like he's closing in on 600K, which is like, 64 billion nowadays, which is an absurd number. I can't even count the amount of zeros in that, even though I am a financial journalist, which speaks highly of me. But I just want to give a bit of context to who Jim Chanos is beforehand, just because I reckon it'll help listeners. He's a legendary short seller. He came to fame decades ago because he was the first to call out the fraud at Enron, which collapsed bankrupt in 2001. And since then, he's become this sort of bearish taker. So he used to have a firm that was called Kynikos Associates, which is a Greek word that translates roughly to cynic. And he's been shorting Coinbase stock, He's been shorting now lately, MicroStrategy or strategy as it's called. And I think a second little leg to what he's doing is that he's not necessarily shorting strategy stock. He's shorting the difference in the strategy stock with the amount of Bitcoin that it holds. So that sort of NAV premium that they call. And what's even more interesting is that he's using the money that he's making to buy more Bitcoin. So he's actually long Bitcoin. He's keen for Bitcoin. So it's important to keep that in mind. Now, without more further ado, let's get into the preferred stock idea, which is, think of it as something between debt and common equity. So bonds, for example, they pay a fixed dividend. So preferred shares pay a fixed dividend, but they don't give preferred stockholders the option to vote. The difference with debt is that debt comes with a maturity date. So that's a date when a loan comes due, right? Preferred stock doesn't. So holders of preferred shares don't get voting rights, but they have priority over common shareholders when it comes to dividends. Now, because preferred stock never matures, strategy doesn't have to pay the principal, doesn't have to face the same refinancing or liquidation risk as it would have to with traditional debt. Saylor has sold about $1 billion, he said, of preferred shares, which I'm guessing lines up with his latest Bitcoin buy, which is this 1 billion that you talked about earlier, a couple minutes ago. And yeah, that takes a dive at the corporate bond market, which Saylor himself said is about $100 trillion, which is another even more mind-boggling number, which I'm not sure anybody, even Saylor, has the mind to truly understand that. But yeah, I don't know if you wanted to have a couple questions or if your audience has a couple questions. I know I said a lot there. There's a bit of jargon. Yeah, where do you want to go next, man?
Oh, I've got plenty of questions. Don't worry. So do you feel like this is just another clever way to fund Bitcoin buys, or is it the business version of just yelling YOLO while refinancing your house for Dogecoin? Like, I feel like he's just coming up with all these new vehicles to buy, and I'm as a Bitcoin maxi as the next person, but at a certain point, I've got questions.
I mean, honestly, it can be a bit of both. They don't have to be exclusive, right? It can be a little bit of YOLOing, and it can be a financial gimmick, and it can be like a new playbook, so to speak. He did say something last week that raised massive red flags, which was the prohibitive two words, risk-free. Whenever I hear risk-free coming from somebody who's buying, whether that's Bitcoin or whether it's doing like these pretty wild tricks, I always think to myself, all right, now maybe the short sellers have a point. Maybe there's something going on. And honestly, I was thinking about this morning. Maybe strategy has reached some sort of escape velocity where it doesn't bring enough risk to the market just because it's gotten so big. It's gotten such a big backing. It's like has such network effects that the problem is coming for all the copycats that are following in its footsteps and that just don't have that sort of outside, like massive size, Michael Saylor-like presence, that doesn't have the ear of financiers all across the world, politicians, all that sort of stuff. So I don't know, maybe strategy is rewriting the playbook, or maybe it's going to come back to blow in our faces. There's another thing that I think is important to keep in mind, that people much smarter than myself can't figure out the risk in what he's doing, and they can't, and that in and of itself is a risk, if that makes any sense. You know, like that people are saying it's this classic idea of unknown unknowns, you know, like there's got to be somewhere there that's sort of making people pause. That's not just these sort of contrarian stock takers like Chanos, you know?
Yeah, I mean, when you're kind of making this foray into a whole new economic system, you make a point, because like, I guess my risk would be like, what happens if Bitcoin falls below their average price per Bitcoin, right? Which is like 70,000. What happens there? Do they actually consider selling? If they do consider selling, does that cause an absolute avalanche across all these treasury companies across the board? And then where are we? But we just haven't really faced that type of scenario yet, so it's hard to know what you don't know, I guess. And in your article, Chanos says that Strategy's valuation logic is basically apply a multiple to the gains, right? AKA magic math. Do you think that the market is genuinely buying into that? Or are we just watching the world's most bullish group hallucination in real time?
I mean, Bitcoiners have been known to be bullish hallucinators for years, haven't they? Like, at least I know I have been. And I'm going to speak for a little bit of my brethren right now that we do like to indulge in some financial psychedelics, so to speak. So for those wondering, like, Chanos, what he says, he's likened the concept, like what he says is, if a person's house goes from 450K to 500K, the property should now be worth 1.5 million because you've got to apply the multiple to the gain itself, not necessarily to the property. The big issue there is that there's so much leverage that it's getting just pumped into the system that, like you said just before, like if it falls below that that 70,000 threshold, what happens? Do they start to sell? Do they start to sell coins? Do they not? Something important to keep in mind is that the preferred share options that they're pulling out, that they're pushing out, they can suspend dividend payments if they have to, want to, need to. You know, like the coffee's a bit cold for Saylor in the morning. Maybe he's keen to put a plug in that for a second. What happens then? Do people start to panic and pull everything out? And then there's another thing that we have to keep in mind that Saylor the other day, or not the other day, but at Bitcoin 2025 said that he's not in favor of showing his proof of reserves. And so I was chatting to some people who were like, is he selling? If he's selling, why is he selling? Like, I know that Time Chain Index, Sammy over there, and I think Arkham as well, they pulled out like a bunch of MicroStrategy's holdings. So we do have some sort of gauge on how much he's holding. But what happens if it falls, like, and they have to start selling, and then that sort of premium starts to get squeezed, people start to panic, and it creates this sort of negative feedback loop where Bitcoin falls, stock prices fall, they can't keep a hold of sort of market sentiment, because a lot of these buys are pretty much you're buying on the bullishness rather than the actual business model. You know, that's a big question mark. Like, has buying Bitcoin become a business model? We can dive into that, which I think is a pretty interesting idea, because like the 200 and so companies that are now doing it say that it is, and the market is starting to price them. But how much money is there to go around to be able to like give these massive premiums, the premiums that they have? It's like a big whirlwind happening right now. It's really exciting, but I don't really know where I like. I'm a Bitcoiner first and foremost, but then I have my skeptical side on me because I'm a journalist and we have to be skeptical. It's inherent nature. So I don't know. Like, and I don't like to say that Jim Chanos, because he is Jim Chanos, has a point. But like, we have a saying in Chile, at least, that the devil knows more because he's old than because he's the devil. And so, like, the word of experience, I guess, does have to lay a hand from the guy who called out Enron's fraud ages ago. Like, you have to listen. You have to listen. Whether he's right or wrong, time will tell. Time is telling him that he is wrong, even though he started shorting strategy stock when they're starting to short the spread when it was at 2.2 x premium, and now it's down to 1.8, I think. If it gets down to that sort of 1 to NAV or lower, who knows, man? Who knows, Hank? Who knows?
Who knows is right. We're in uncharted territories here. And here's a question for you. Why do you think it is that Michael Saylor hasn't exactly shown their proof of actual Bitcoin holdings? I mean, can't you be both very long on Bitcoin and bullish on it, but also trade it in the short term to recoup gains and then also use those gains to buy more Bitcoin when the price inevitably dips? I mean, isn't that also sound strategy in itself? Or by doing that, do you think Saylor kind of would go against the gospel he's kind of preaching, which is buy and hold forever? So he kind of has backed himself into a corner where he shouldn't even be doing that right now, at least not publicly.
I mean, I think that last point is what's like driving the situation. Like, he's been saying that he's going to die and burn his keys when he dies and like all that sort of stuff. And you never sell your Bitcoin, hodl maxi, and all this sort of stuff. So like for him to sell, that would be like a massive shot. Like he'd be shooting himself in the foot for everything or in the mouth, I guess, for everything he's been saying over the years. Now, he has been saying stuff that is a bit contrary or antithetical to Bitcoin culture as it is. Like when he said that stuff about crypto anarchists, or like he's had some dodgy things about self-custody that he said. I don't know. Like, I mean, I could put on my tinfoil hat and like we can speculate on why he doesn't want to show his proof of reserves. There's that whole OPSEC thing, but then you have sort of like, I think it was a couple of days later, Jack Mahler is coming out and he showed proof of reserves for 21. Bitwise has done it. So that idea that institutions can't or shouldn't or whatever, I mean, it kind of fell flat on his face. I think he can sell. And honestly, what you were saying before is right. You can't, like, anybody can do whatever they want to with their Bitcoin. Like, you can buy Bitcoin and hold it forever. You can buy Bitcoin and sell a little bit to then buy back cheaper. You can just trade it. Like, do whatever you want. But if you're going to go around shouting to the seven heavens that like you have to hold above all and end all, and strategy has become the sort of like flagship for like hodlers, to go back on them and to say like, no, we're selling now because of this, even if it's to sell to buy back cheaper, that's like I mean, you're kind of falling flat on your face, and you're just like, all right, man, what are you doing here? Like, I understand the strategy and I'm not against it, but like, I don't know, it's counter to everything you've said over the years. And so that would be like, all right, what's different? And mind you, people can change their minds. I'm a believer in people changing their mind. I've never believed much in this sort of, he said this 7 years ago and now he's doing that, so this is unacceptable. And this, nah, like one of the best ways to show intelligence is that you change your mind along the way in the face of new information. So, I mean, I'm not going to hold him to like a super rigid stick, but then at the same time, he holds all Bitcoiners to a super rigid stick. So, I don't know, man. There's a lot going on here that I'm okay with.
The most to lose, right? If he does sell, or word becomes of him selling, being the largest, at least public Bitcoin holder in the world, that could start an entire domino effect of other people changing course, and then we might experience a whole new level of volatility that we hadn't experienced before, right? Because we have all these people that are using this blueprint right now, from Metaplanet to Trump's media group, raise money, buy Bitcoin, repeat. Do you feel like right now, as we're seeing this new trend really catch fire, that we're watching the beginning of like a corporate Bitcoin standard, or is this just a new asset-backed bubble with better memes?
I mean, the memes are pretty on point, to be fair. If we're known as for something, it's definitely memes. It's a good question. Like, at the end of the day, this sort of corporate Bitcoin treasury trend there's two ways to look at it, I suppose, or this is how I look at it. Like, are you simply buying it to sort of keep your reserves in check, or are you buying it to pump your stock price and to like nab some of that premium that people are placing? If you're buying it and just as a reserve asset, and because you want to take care of the health of your company and you want to have money and all that sort of stuff, that's a trend that I can see that's sustainable, 100%. And that makes sense, because it's like an individual Bitcoiner strategy at a corporate level. And I mean, as long as, I guess unless you go 100% all in, that's a different question. Then you have the second, like the other side of the coin. Are you doing this to appreciate your stock? And that's when I think and that's when I sort of start to hit the brakes a little bit, because I was reading, for example, James Check's newsletter. Shout out to James Check. If you don't uh, read his newsletter, Check on Chain, former Glassnode senior analyst. It's fucking brilliant. Highly recommend. He was making some pretty interesting points about how like strategy and Metaplanet are becoming the outliers, and the rule will be that treasury companies that are looking to capture that premium are going to trend to zero. And that just because, and he obviously lays out a bunch of different insights to why he goes there, but some treasury companies are bound to outperform. Most aren't, just because the price of Bitcoin is going to continue to go up. Fiat, the amount of fiat that you're going to need to be able to buy that Bitcoin is going to be, you're going to lose purchasing power. So you won't be able to buy as much Bitcoin. So you're going to need even more capital to be able to do it. And that creates this sort of negative feedback. Then there's another interesting point, which is the sort of all in versus half baked strategy. Because it's from what it seems, if you go all in on this Bitcoin treasury strategy, then the market will prize you. And then, which is what strategy has been doing, which is what Metaplanet has been doing, which is what 21 is going to be doing, Naka, a bunch of other ones. And then you have the ones that are like half-assing it. And these half-assing it ones are Semler, Bitcoin miners, and then we continue to go down the list. And you can see by their stock prices, the vast majority of those half-assing ones are down. And so the market is sort of punishing them because, let's be real, like Bitcoiners can be like, they're zealots, like if you don't go all in, then you're not even here. So, and the market is punishing them for it. And it makes sense for a company not to go all in on like a Bitcoin buying treasury strategy, or to do this in the way that strategy is doing or Metaplanet is doing and all that sort of stuff. And so I think that trend is going to be a little bit dangerous. And also like investors, as soon as they start to hone in on, because you have like the network effects of these first companies that have been doing it, like the Metaplanets, like the 21s, like the strategies. But then as you go further down the list, how much money is there from investors, whether that's institutional or whether that's retail, to actually be buying these, and that it would make sense? Because the premium isn't going to be there, or if it's going to be there, you also have to think, all right, if the premium's not there, is it outperforming Bitcoin? That's another question. Like, to be able to like front run Bitcoin is the big fucking ass. Will the 230 companies, or however, I think it's 235 if you ask Bitcoin treasuries, will they be able to outperform Bitcoin? I highly doubt it. So I don't know. Like, I guess those are the two things that I would sort of keep in mind when you're looking at this.
Yeah, and Saylor has an interesting view on this. He says that we need to stop valuing strategy like a Bitcoin vault and start valuing its ability to generate Bitcoin yield. Do you feel like there's any precedent for that logic, or are we in a full what if vibes were a revenue model territory right now? Like, what do you think about Saylor's thoughts on that?
I mean, the Bitcoin yield idea is a pretty interesting one, and everybody wants to have more Bitcoin, obviously. The question is, do investors want to have a Bitcoin proxy, and does a Bitcoin proxy count as Bitcoin yield? Is it enough? Like, is my money getting me enough of that Bitcoin exposure instead of me buying it directly? I know obviously a bunch of institutions might be looking at this and they have self-custody issues or custody issues, they have tax issues, they have capital gains issues. Like, it's different for a retail investor than it is for an institution. So there's that to keep in mind. But like, I think that's the ultimate question. Like, is the Bitcoin yield enough to be able to like persuade investors to be like, yeah, this makes sense? And because, I mean, obviously you're capturing both things, aren't you? You're capturing the stock appreciation, you're capturing more Bitcoin, which is what makes it interesting. But how long can that last? And how long can it, again, going back to what I said before, how long can it outperform Bitcoin so that investors continue to be like, all right, I'm going to buy MicroStrategy. Now, mind you, there is a very, very dedicated fan base to, like Saylorists, and Saylorism is a thing. And that is goes beyond any of this financial stuff that we're talking about right now. Like, so there's that to keep in mind as well. Like, investors believe blindly in Michael Saylor. And so whatever he says, and even if the stock price goes down, they get a little bit liquidated or whatever happens, and this BTC yield drops, like people are probably going to still believe him no matter what. I mean, we saw it when he said that when he came out and saying, I don't want to do proof of reserves for strategy. And people came out defending him, even though that's directly antithetical to what Bitcoin represents. Now, I'm not saying that's a good or a bad thing, or I have my reservations about the idea. But what I'm saying is that, like, he got a lot of backlash on one hand, and then he got a lot of defenders on the other. And that just made me think, like, holy fuck. Doesn't matter what he does, and doesn't matter what he says, and whether that premium goes down, and whether that BTC yield goes from 57% to 1%, people are probably going to still buy this fucking stock. So, yeah, there's that. I don't know, man. It's really interesting to be watching this, quote unquote, in the front row. Like watch this happen, watch this like play out. There's like there's Saylor lists on Twitter, there's Saylor groups on Telegram. It's a wild, wild time, man. Wild time.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, he is an incredible spokesperson for Bitcoin, right? And let's just say, for instance, this all works and Saylor's right. And let's say he actually disrupts the $100 trillion corporate bond market. What do you feel that this will do to traditional finance? And would anyone on Wall Street ever even admit that he was right?
No. I mean, financial naysayers and haters, especially when it comes to Bitcoin, are everywhere, super eager to push back, to critique, to say no. So even if he disrupts it and he takes over and this Bitcoin treasury strategy works and like this sort of preferred stock option offerings works and convertible debt offering works and everything works, he's always going to have people saying that he's wrong. He's always going to have people saying this is the bubble. I mean, this is like, obviously this is like several degrees further than Bitcoin, but like Bitcoin to this day, 16, 17 years later, like still gets critics about all sorts of stupid talking points, whether that's illicit crime, whether that's Bitcoin mining FUD, whether that's this goes against what Bitcoin represents or what is, it's always going to have them. So I honestly see a world where no matter what Saylor does, much like no matter what Bitcoin does, is always going to have critics, always going to have people saying this is going to be a bubble and it's going to burst. And yeah, it's always going to keep on chugging no matter how many rocks get thrown at it or like people try to dynamite it, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's I mean, I don't see it. And there's nobody that has more hubris than Wall Street. So Wall Street analysts or Wall Street investors, no matter who they are, no matter how big they are, the willingness to admit whether they're being wrong or defeat doesn't really lie with them. You know, there's always some slick spin or something that they can say that was going to sort of be like, this isn't because of that, and look over there, and all that sort of stuff. So I don't know. I mean, we can paint their faces in clowns, but they're always going to just put a mask on it and keep on spewing whatever they want to spew. That's how I see it, at least.
I think you're right. Jamie Dimon will never accept us, and he never will. And it's just something we're all going to have to deal with. Pedro, I
I'm
want you to
happy
stay
to
put.
not
We're
be
going to take a
accepted.
quick break, but when we're back, I want to talk with you about this next story. It's about Shaquille O'Neal, as he just settled a lawsuit with FTX for a cool $1.8 million. All right, and we're back with more Bull Run this morning. Next up, we got Shaquille O'Neal. He's in the news as he officially paid $1.8 million in hush money to pretend he didn't tell you FTX is a slam dunk every time. That's my Shaq impression. It's not good. Now, the 7-foot NBA Hall of Famer and occasional icy hot spokesperson is now trying to cool off the heat from a class action lawsuit brought by FTX victims who, in fairness, thought they were investing, not donating, their life savings to Sam Bankman-Fried's cosplay of Bernie Madoff. Now, O'Neal was one of several celebrities who hyped FTX back when it was the golden child of crypto, before it collapsed like a wet cardboard box full of vaporware and hubris. The lawsuit claims these celebrity endorsements were deceptive, which is legalese for you convinced grandma to buy Bitcoin with an app built like a Ponzi scheme. The $1.8 million settlement still needs court approval, so technically the judge can still say, nah, go sit under the hoop and think about what you did. Shaq's payout follows a $1.3 million settlement by Trevor Lawrence and a squad of YouTubers who also lent their credibility to the project, which again was probably paid in tokens that no longer exist. Notably, other celebs like Tom Brady, Steph Curry, and Larry David are still fighting the lawsuit, because nothing screams, I stand by my decision, like doubling down in court over an app that lost $8 billion. A key plaintiff who lost $2 million said the Shaq settlement brings closure to the darkest period of our lives, which is an extremely polite way of saying, gee, thanks for the refund, crumbs, Diesel. Also, Shaq allegedly only gave back a portion of what FTX paid him, so he still walks away with a bag, albeit one slightly lighter than before. The total class damages could hit $10 billion, and that's assuming Sam Bankman-Fried doesn't start another exchange from prison with a fax machine and ramen packets. Let this be a lesson. Bitcoin doesn't need celebrity endorsements. It has math. FTX has Tom Brady. Guess which one is still standing? It's the Bitcoin. All right, we're bringing Pedro back. Pedro! Shaq, he just settled for $1.8 million. Do you think that number reflects actual accountability, or is it just a PR move to quietly exit stage left?
PR move to quietly exit stage left. I mean, to be fair, I don't know how much money he made from that, like from getting involved with the FTX scandal. Like, as long as if he paid less in the settlement than what he made from that endorsement, then he got away with whatever he wanted or whatever he did, And I don't know what you reckon, but like going against the celebrities that fell for SBF, like for me, all the darts should go against SBF. I mean, unless he knew like of a bunch of stuff, and when things started to like implode, he found out or something like that, then I'd be a little bit more inclined to be like, all right, that's fair, this, that. But like to go against necessarily, I mean, he's an NBA player or former NBA player. Like, how much can you fault him for something that everybody fell for? I don't know if you agree. Like, I'm curious on what you reckon. Like, do you think it makes sense to go against the celebrities that also fell for SBF?
I think to your point, I feel like they were kind of bamboozled like the rest of us. Like Shaq and the Tom Bradys of the world have too much to lose and not enough to gain by partnering with FTX if at any point they actually felt that it wasn't a legit operation, right? Like tarnishing their reputations if someone found out that they knowingly did this while all this shenanigans were going behind the scenes and they were aware of these at the time, it just doesn't add up to me. Like Shaq is a pretty prominent businessman. He owns like dozens and dozens of different types of businesses across the country. I don't think he would lend his name, or Tom Brady would either, if they had any idea of the shenanigans that were going on behind the scenes. It just wouldn't make sense. So you can't really fault them for trying to cash in on this crypto thing that they were hearing and seeing everywhere. They probably thought it was a legitimate operation, thought, hey, I'll lend my name and my endorsement to it, but I just don't think there was any way they knew. It wouldn't make sense to me, given the potential reputational ramifications that would come if people thought they were ever doing something to deceive. I mean, that's my thought. What do you think?
No, I totally agree. Like, they're just too public of figures to be able to be like, I'm going to get involved in this knowing that there's some sort of weirdness going on, aside from the weirdness being crypto itself. But like, to be, there's something here that doesn't make sense, but I'm still going to dive into it. I'm like, I don't really know, man. Like, SBF was, I mean, aside from some people who like caught on pretty quickly, like, it didn't, he had all of us sort of running around with our heads chopped off and all that sort of stuff. So this is like people going after just frustration, you know, just like, oh, I'm frustrated. I need to get some sort of victory, something back, and I'm just going to go against any of these. And I feel like there could be a little bit of like, I don't really like these guys. I mean, it feels weird to say it, but like, because Shaq is Shaq. Like, I grew up in the U.S. Shaquille O'Neal is like legit. Tom Brady, I'm a Redskins fan, or now called Commanders. And so I'm not the biggest fan of Tom Brady, but I recognize the figure. And
lock him up.
Like, yeah, man, 100%. If you know where Tom Brady is, go find him. But it doesn't make sense to go after these guys when for me, they didn't commit the crime knowingly, at least. You know, I like these images. I'm a big fan of these images of Shaq, though, because he's like unwittingly judging what we have to say. So for those that are watching and like seeing him, what the stories are, he's like, all right, Hank, Pedro, what are you going to say about me now? But yeah, it doesn't make much sense to me. SBF can continue to rot in jail. And yeah, I feel like the lawsuits and the money should come from him and whoever knowingly helped or did stuff, rather than beloved sports characters. You know, I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe I'm being naive here. I don't know.
Now, given the number of celebrities that are still fighting this lawsuit, like we're talking Tom Brady, Steph Curry, Larry David, does this case feel like it's setting any real precedent to you, or is it just a cautionary tale for Hollywood's next crypto cash grab?
That's a good question, actually. I feel like it will set some sort of precedent. I don't know how big a blemish SBF might be or is or anything like that, but I feel like it will set some sort of precedent for big name figures, whether that's in sports, whether that's movie stars, whatever you want, to get involved and to like blindly endorse these sort of companies. Again, maybe I'm being naive and I want to believe that. You never know. Like, I don't know, who was it? Kevin O'Leary, who came out saying he'd invested in another SBF company or something like that shortly after all this happened. He's like, sure, it was a fraud, but was it actually like, was it actually a bad business model or something like that? Well, for sure, yeah. But also, like, the fact that these people would still continue to invest and to like get involved in this kind of stuff is, yeah, makes me think maybe it's not a precedent, but I'm going to say it is, and I'm hoping you're going to agree with me, because otherwise we're going to have fucking problems.
No, there's no going to be any problems here. I think you're right. I think, you know, they need to lay out what people can expect when they're kind of shilling for these companies, right? And people need to be informed and not just lend their name to something because there's, you know, billions of dollars going on behind the scenes. You would think if something's worth billions of dollars, or they're holding, you know, billions and billions of dollars of people's money, that it would be a a real financial instrument or tool, but like you mentioned from Enron earlier, that's not always the case. So I think people are going to be a lot more wary going forward of lending their names to businesses like FTX and the like in crypto, when despite all of the maturation we've seen, it is still a bit of a wild west out there, and we're still kind of figuring out who the good and bad actors are every day. So no, I agree a lot with you on that. Hang with me really quick, Pedro. We got one more story I'm going to bring you into in just a minute, and I want to talk about, because in a move that absolutely no financial advisor recommended, and that's why it's so great, GameStop has officially doubled down on its Bitcoin strategy. The video game retailer turned meme stop mascot turned proto MicroStrategy clone announced it's raising a cool $2.25 billion through a convertible note offering, because if you're gonna moon, why not launch from a pile of corporate debt? That's $500 million more than their original announcement the day before, because apparently someone at GameStop hit the "Are you sure you want to go full Bitcoin" button, and then they clicked yes twice. The notes mature in 2032, which means investors have 7 years to wonder if they accidentally finance the digital Chuck E. Cheese or the next Saylor level treasury play. And look, this isn't coming out of nowhere either. Back on May 28th, GameStop announced that they'd bought over 4,700 Bitcoin worth about 513 million bucks, 2 months after publicly saying they'd build out a Bitcoin treasury strategy, which is corporate speak for "we're tired of selling used Funko Pops. Let's try sound money now." Now, that new $2.25 billion raise is earmarked for general corporate purposes, a phrase so vague it may as well say, "We might buy more Bitcoin if Keith Gill tweets again." Now, the company's investment policy does leave the door wide open for more crypto purchases, which makes sense when you realize they're now the 11th largest public Bitcoin holder on Earth, behind Galaxy Digital. That's right, GameStop is now closer to Satoshi than it is to selling you a PlayStation in store. But of course, Wall Street absolutely hated this news. Their GameStop stock dropped 22% after the announcement because legacy investors heard, "We're raising debt to buy Bitcoin," and immediately started Googling how to short nostalgia. And to be fair, the company's Q1 2025 earnings were rough. They pulled in $732.4 million in revenue, down from $881.8 million last year, and missing analyst estimates by about $22 million, which is coincidentally the average price of an unopened Wii U on eBay. Physical game sales are slowing, digital game sales are going direct to console, and the only thing GameStop's got going for it is the exact thing that scares traditional finance, and that is Bitcoin on the balance sheet. So look, all right, this isn't a guaranteed 4D chess move. It could totally blow up in their face, or it could be the only reason they're even relevant in 2032. But either way, it's bold, and bold definitely beats boring, because while other companies are doing another round of stock buybacks and praying interest rates drops, GameStop's taking a page out of the Saylor playbook and converting debt equity into digital scarcity. And if Bitcoin rips, this could be the greatest corporate comeback since Apple convinced people to buy $1,200 phones without headphone jacks. Pedro, we're bringing you back. GameStop just raised $2.25 billion through convertible notes with the possibility of using that money to buy more Bitcoin. Do you see this as a smart, forward-thinking strategy or a high-risk move that's more about headlines than actual long-term value?
It's a loaded question, but I like it's. So first of all, the market punished them for the potentially. So because GameStop dropped like 22%, I think, maybe 25% at one point. So the market punished them for what we were talking about before, that sort of half-assed Bitcoin strategy, because it's either go big or go home. You know, you want to, if you're going to raise billions to buy Bitcoin, you want to go and buy the actual Bitcoin. If like a video game retailer in 2025 is raising a bunch of money to potentially buy Bitcoin, and then they don't actually buy the Bitcoin, and like video games are going the way of, like you said, Chuck E. Cheese, Blockbuster, all these sort of companies. If they don't buy the actual Bitcoin, then what are they going to do with that money? And what are they trying to time the market? Are they like trying to wait for it to drop a little bit to lower their average cost basis or whatever you want. Um, I don't know. It feeds back to what we were talking about before. Like it's why would investors want to buy a company that's just buying Bitcoin that's already like not just like going down, like but the trend is for a company like GameStop to not exist anymore, you know? Like or what their business model, like their core business model is. And I understand that they're shifting now to like the Bitcoin treasury model, and that's the move that they want to make, and that's what they're sort of tagging themselves as. But like we were saying before, unless you're like an outperformer or an outlier and you're like one of the big ones, does it make sense? Does it not? Like, why would an investor look at it as an attractive buy? And like just holding the Bitcoin will and buying a bunch of Bitcoin right now into the future is definitely going to keep your company alive. Like that's at least it's going to have enough money there floating around. Granted, you don't sell along the way and Bitcoin doesn't disappear. But yeah, why would an investor buy GameStop unless you like, yeah, you want to quote unquote diversify or all this sort of stuff? I don't know. It doesn't make much sense at all. And yeah, unless they go out to, I'm going to like hammer down this point, unless you go out and buy the Bitcoin, the idea that you're doing it to buy the Bitcoin doesn't matter. Like, buy the fucking Bitcoin. And then your strategy at least is aligned with what you're saying. Until then, it's just all smokes and whatever you want to think about.
It's very confusing to me, and I love that MicroStrategy changed its name to Strategy, because this is now becoming the strategy playbook. You have a company that has a lot of cash reserves, maybe a fledgling business, and they kind of morph their whole business model into, we're going to become a Bitcoin treasury company now. It kind of reminds me of, if you ever remember the old school South Park episode about the underpants gnomes, and they were like, step one, collect underpants. Step two, they don't know. Step three equals profit. And that to me kind of feels like what we're seeing right now. I don't really understand what step two is for these companies that don't really seem to have a profitable business outside of like, hey, we're just going to hoard Bitcoin now. And we're obviously seeing this now across the board with a lot of companies. I don't know. I'm a little concerned about what that means. Are we building a house of cards here? Or is there some kind of play that I'm not seeing that all these companies are going to be doing going forward? Do you feel like that's how you're seeing this, or am I maybe the lone wolf in that?
No, 100%. I'll join you and we'll make it a pack. It doesn't make any. I love the fact that you just howled. That's brilliant. I mean, they're all trying to, they're not just, so the big problem here is not that they're trying to mirror the playbook, they're trying to mirror strategy success. And strategy success is, you can't imitate that. Like they've been buying Bitcoin since August 2020. Like they've got Michael Saylor at the helm. Like they've just, I'm not going to say they've made it, but like they're just so far along the race that it doesn't, yeah, it's not going to be sustainable to be continue to see these like copycats come out. And like I know I'm going to make reference to something that's going to make a lot of Bitcoiners brains explode, but Coinbase, yes, Coinbase pulled out a report last week talking about Attack of the Clones and how like all these companies coming up and popping up are creating the systemic risk for the entire Bitcoin and crypto market because they don't have a sustainable business model. They're not profitable. And it's not just that. They're like the companies that are pursuing these are going directly against the trend of how the world is moving. Like GameStop, who the fuck is going back to GameStop and buying actual retail, like video games or whatever you want? I mean, I could see a point if there was like a board game retailer. I'd understand that. I'd be like, all right, I'm game. Maybe I'm biased because I love board games, but still, like video games, really? And so, unless you have, and for me, I'm not entirely sure that Bitcoin treasury companies is a business model in and of itself. Maybe I'm lost there. Maybe I'm also missing step two, but it just doesn't ring for me, you know? Like that's at least how I look at it.
I think only time is going to tell, Pedro. And speaking of time, we are out of it today, my friend. I want to thank you so much for joining us on the Blockchain Report. It was an absolute blast chatting with you, and you are welcome back anytime. Really quick, if our audience wants to learn more about you and all the things you're doing, where can we send them?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at El Pedro Solimano. Sorry for saying that with a Spanish accent. I am Chilean, for those that are wondering. And then I'm writing daily on DL News. I've got a sneaky podcast called Chain Spotting. And yeah, man, you can find me on any of those platforms. And thanks heaps for bringing me on, man. This was a blast. Had a lot of fun.
Oh,
good stuff.
Pleasure was all mine. Great to not be a lone wolf anymore. Oh, Pedro Solimano, thank you so much for coming on the show. And we'll see you hopefully again really soon, buddy.
Catch you, man.
All right, gang, that's a wrap for today's episode of the Blockchain Report. Make sure to come back tomorrow for more crypto chaos. We'll see you then. Arrivederci, amigos.